I'll welcome everyone to the first meeting of the City Commission for 2022 on Thursday, January the 6th. We're meeting at 6 p.m. in the Commission chambers of the Municipal and Safety Building. We'll begin our meeting in prayer with Pastor Will Easler from Grace Meadows Church. If you'll come up and offer the invocation, please stand.
Let's pray. Father, we are grateful, grateful and humbled for another day of life, for breath in our lungs, for your goodness and for your grace that you have showed to us. Father, we're grateful that we get to live in such a beautiful part of the country, that we get to enjoy the many different seasons and the beauty of your creation. Father, I'm grateful for the opportunity to pray over this gathering tonight of your city leaders. Father, we ask that you would give them wisdom, that you would give them discernment in guiding and leading the direction of this city. Father, that you would guide their thoughts, their conversation, and Father, that you would have your hand upon their leading for this beautiful place. Father, we ask that you would continue to work in and through this city and through your people. And Father, that you would continue to do the work of your kingdom here. And Father, we're just grateful for this moment. So Father, we ask that you would bless this time tonight, and thank you for all that you do for us. In Jesus' name, amen.
If you'll face the flag for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And I'll welcome our new city manager, Kathy Ball, to the dais. Thank you. And I'll let you read out our first item of business.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. Our first order of business is the consideration of approval of the minutes for the regularly scheduled City Commission meeting held on Thursday, December 16th, 2021.
Is there action or correction from the commission?
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. If there's no further discussion, we'll call the roll.
Commissioner Brock?
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter?
Yes.
Commissioner Murphy?
Yes.
Mayor Wise?
Yes. Now we come to proclamations. Who's up first?
Martin Luther King.
We have two proclamations. The first recognizes Martin Luther King Jr. Day, and so I'll welcome our guests who may be here on behalf of receiving that to come up and join me. Whereas Martin Luther King Jr. Day is a federal holiday occurring on the third Monday of January each year and is observed as a national day of service to celebrate the civil rights leader's life and legacy. And whereas Dr. King envisioned an America where little black boys and black girls would be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers. And whereas Dr. King envisioned communities where everybody can be great because everybody can serve. You don't have to have a college degree to serve. You don't have to make your subjects and your verbs agree to serve. You only need a heart full of grace, a soul generated by love. And whereas Dr. King believed that life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are you doing for others? And whereas Johnson City's local MLK Planning Committee chose the theme, Love Thy Neighbor, to compel the next generation of leaders to manifest Dr. King's dream by engaging in acts of kindness and empathy. And whereas the local MLK Planning Committee has planned a variety of activities to recognize the MLK Day of Service and commemorate Dr. King's commitment to racial and human camaraderie. Now, therefore, I, Joe Wise, Mayor of the City of Johnson City, do hereby proclaim January 17th, 2022 as Martin Luther King Jr. Day. And I present that to you. I'll pull the Post-it note off. I'm sorry, it's very tacky. Very tacky for me to leave the Post-it note on there. And I'll turn this over for any remarks you'd like to make.
Thank you.
We want to thank the city commission and the city for helping us plan the event. What we're doing is we're having we normally do a prayer breakfast on Saturday the 15th, which is going to be his birthday. We're doing a free breakfast, and what we're trying to do is get the young people out to talk about community service and volunteerism. That's what we're trying to do in the city, is get young people to understand how Johnson City works and how the people in the community work. And that's a big part of it. So we're inviting all the young people. Anybody who wants to come to breakfast, it's free. And we're going to talk about community and ism, and we're going to pray a little bit. Then on Sunday, we got a worship service that's going on. That's going to be virtual through Grace Temple Eternal Life Center with some groups of pastors. Then on Monday, we're going to do a story time. And we're going to talk about the civil rights movement and what the kids can do to be involved in the civil rights movement and do a lot of different activities during that time. Then we're going to have lunch, and then we're going to have a community walk. And we're going to walk through town and let everybody know about the civil rights movement, how things are going. Plus, we have a blood drive, and we just about got it filled up. And we're talking about sickle cell anemia, how it affects the African American people and everything like that. So it's important, and we've got a lot of donors, a lot of people that's coming to that event. So that's what we're doing for Martin Luther King Day. And it's all about volunteer and community service. And we want to thank everybody if you just come out and enjoy what we do. Thank you again.
Well, I thank you all, and I just want to acknowledge the service that the two gentlemen here do, not just on Martin Luther King Day, but every day as a member of our school board and as the vice mayor of the town of Jonesboro, Adam Dixon. So appreciate all of you. Thank you very much.
Jones. See you up there.
Our next proclamation is regarding human trafficking. Do we have anyone? Thank you. Please come on up. I took the Post-it note off, so it won't be clumsy. Whereas human trafficking is a crime where force, fraud, or coercion is used to compel a person to perform labor, services, or commercial sex. And whereas this form of modern slavery erodes personal dignity, takes away freedom and autonomy, and does not discriminate based on socioeconomic status, race, or neighborhood. And whereas, according to the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation, human trafficking is the second fastest growing criminal industry just behind drug trafficking, and on average 600,000 to 800,000 individuals are bought and sold for sex every year. And whereas Tennessee leads the nation in its approach to addressing human trafficking with proactive legislation and comprehensive research, and it is more important than ever to promote awareness and community education opportunities, furthering a community-wide response in which everyone has an important part to play toward ending human trafficking. And whereas in Northeast Tennessee, the Community Coalition Against Human Trafficking works tirelessly to educate local communities about human trafficking and provide trauma-informed aftercare services to survivors of human trafficking. And whereas ithastostop.com is an outreach of the TBI, encouraging everyone to take a stand and help victims make use of the human trafficking hotline, advocate, spread the word, and support nonprofit in the front lines of combating human trafficking. Now, therefore, I, Joe Wise, the mayor of Johnson City, do hereby proclaim January the 11th, 2022 as Human Trafficking Awareness Day. And I'll give you that. And any.
Hi guys, thank you all so much for having me tonight. My name is Gabby Smith and I'm with the Community Coalition Against Human Trafficking. We are the point of contact for survivors in the East Tennessee region. We partner with the Tennessee Anti-Slavery Alliance that covers Middle and West Tennessee. So we're the point of contact. We provide direct services and aftercare services for individuals who are either at risk of trafficking or have been trafficked. We also provide free trainings for law enforcement, health professionals, education, basically anybody in the community. We also have Human Trafficking 101 trainings for our community, and they are free, and you can check us out on Facebook or Instagram for any information, and I think that's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for your work.
Commission, your next order of business is consideration of the consent agenda.
All right, just to keep things fresh, I'm going to turn to Commissioner Brock, who's rarely the first one to say anything.
Yes,
that she
sir, I
would like to
do.
pull.
5.1.1,
Okay,
and this next one, 5.1.2.
all right. Well, having claimed 50% of the consent agenda, I will now turn to Commissioner Hunter.
No, nothing.
Okay,
No, sir.
okay. So 5.1.1, the Portland Utility Construction bid.
Thank you, Mr. Witherspoon.
Mr. Witherspoon, as I was looking over the bid, and it was laid out very well, but there was one line item, and I think it was 2E.
Okay.
It said there was an arithmetic problem. I haven't heard that word in a long time, but their bid on that line item was so, tremendously lower than the other bids, like 68 versus 148.
Okay.
But my question was, in order to feel good about approving this, if that was wrong, the 68,000, and you highlighted it in here, if that was wrong, was the adjustment made to the bottom line? And what was the new line item bid
Well-
once it was corrected?
Right. I can't tell you about that exact bid. That was Portland Utilities. Mr. Lane was handling this. The adjustment would have been made in the overall award that you've been asked to approve tonight.
Bottom line?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, but I noticed they didn't correct it here in
Right.
the breakdown.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
But
All right. And the second one was, the next one on the change order. And my question, the vendor who won the bid couldn't deliver on 11 items.
that's correct.
Do we feel comfortable they're going to be able to carry this out without any other disruptions?
We've got no indication that, I think on these specific items for the amount that they bid, this is another one of those issues that's a supply chain issue, and what they bid, they couldn't honor. There is another bid that you have in front of you tonight where they have also bid additional items on a separate bid, and we believe that they'll be able to honor those.
Okay. So it was
This-
mainly supply chain.
Yeah, it's if you remember, you've adjusted some chemical prices that we used at both the water and the wastewater plants. That's been supply chain issues, and it continues on to some degree.
All right. Thank you. That's just all I have.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there other questions of staff regarding the consent agenda or an action to move forward?
Move for approval.
We have a motion to approve.
Second.
We have a second. If there's not objection, we'll call the roll on the consent agenda.
Commissioner Brock?
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter?
Yes.
Commissioner Murphy?
Yes.
Mayor Wise?
Yes.
Commission, the next order of business is the final resolution to annex certain property located within the 9th Civil District of Washington County, Tennessee, adjoining the present corporate boundaries of the city of Johnson City, Tennessee, and to incorporate the same within the corporate boundaries of the city of Johnson City, Tennessee, said property located along the north margin of Indian Ridge Road, northwest of its intersection with Rusham Avenue and Hopper Road into the city of Johnson City, Tennessee, by the owner consent and approving a plan of service.
Hi, good evening, Commissioners. So in front of you, I have the final hearing for the annexation over on Indian Ridge Road. I'm going to start with just a refresh on the policy steps and timeline. So again, we've gone through the request to proceed, we have gone through the Planning Commission, and then we had the preliminary resolution, and then now tonight we are having the final resolution and public hearing for the annexation, and then after that, you guys are going to hear the second reading and public hearing of the zoning assignment. So the annexation is going to be done and voted on tonight, and that will be finalized, and then the zoning assignment will come back one more time. So just to refresh everybody on the request, this is the property. It's approximately 40 acres that is up for annexation. The annexation corresponds to the plan of services. And the plan of services includes all of these, and all of the agencies have reviewed and approved the plan of services. And then just to give you guys a little bit of an idea about the taxes, each lot would generate roughly $1,200 in property taxes, which is going to equate to about $157,000 in annual property taxes for the annexation. This is operating off of the assumption of current market construction costs and 125 lot subdivision, which they are proposing, but is non-binding. There's also the assumed generation of 41.25 students. Now, this is going to be over the course of the entire school system, so it's not like you're going to have 41.25 kindergartners, for
Which
instance.
school gets the 2.5 of a student?
Right. So 41.25 students, just a quarter of a student. And so that was given to the Johnson City school system, and they anticipate having room, and they've approved it, and they're on board with that as well. Staff does recommend approval of the plan of services, and as a reminder, Planning Commission also recommend approval of the plan of services.
Commissioner, are there questions for staff? And I think this is public hearing on the plan of service and the annexation, so.
Correct, yes, sir.
I don't think we have any questions for you. Thank you. I'll open the floor to public hearing on the request for annexation of the 40 acres bordering Indian Ridge Road. Anyone wishing to speak for or against is welcome to approach the podium. Seeing no one, we'll close the public hearing and turn to the commission. Well, I mean, I would welcome you to, but I feel like you're winning.
Is this the developer?
I think it is. Come on up, Mr. Karst. If you'll give your name and address, please.
Daniel Karst, 1504 Dobbins Drive, Kingsport, Tennessee, 37664. Anyway, we just, we're here to support it, and if there's anything that you all would like for us to attempt to what we know, maybe a little more today than we might have a few weeks ago, we're here to hopefully answer those as we can. And also, if there's any other concerns that I might be able to answer tonight, we're here, we're available. So we just want to, and thank you all.
Thank you. Are there questions for Mr. Karst while he's here? Not, thank you very much. We'll close the public hearing and turn to the commission for action on the annexation request.
I'd just like to say, our housing stock is very low in Johnson City, and so for me, this is a welcome project and development. I know we have full services out in that area, so on the city, it won't be, a real challenge to provide all those services. And that's a great area for further development. So we look forward to seeing what goes there. Hopefully, it will be a characteristic of that area, and so we look forward to it. And I'll make a motion to approve.
We have a motion to approve. Is there a second? Motion and a second. If there's not objection, we'll call the roll.
Commissioner Brock?
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter?
Yes.
Commissioner Murphy?
Yes.
Mayor Wise?
Yes.
So, Commission, with taking that action, the next order of business is an ordinance to amend the zoning of the same area. This would be the zoning map of the City of Johnson City, Tennessee, being part of the appendix to ordinance number 1519, entitled as the ordinance to adopt a code of laws and ordinances for the City of Johnson City, Tennessee, and to repeal all laws and ordinances in conflict therewithin, and amend therefore by assigning R2C Low Density Residential District to 2 unnumbered parcels along Indian Ridge Road northeast of its intersection with Russell Avenue and Moccasin Court. And see the Cambrio annexation.
Thank you.
Good evening again, Commissioners. So again, we already went over the timeline. So just a reminder, this is second reading and public hearing, and then it will come back at the next meeting for its third and final reading. The request, again, is this 40-acre area right here, and the applicant is requesting R2C, Low Density Residential District. Now, I've already been over this, but I am going to kind of go back over the fact that residential is very in character with the area. You see that, you've got R2, R2B, R4, RP3, all out and surrounding these parcels. Now, at the last meeting, we kind of dove a little bit deeper into this chart, and I know that you guys had some questions with the R2C, so I want to start just by refreshing your memory on the difference between R2C and the other various R2s. So they really have a bit of a smaller lot size and a bit of a smaller building line. So what we did was we took a look at the density in the surrounding areas. So like I said, you already have a good bit of residential around. So if you'll see, you can see that there's 8.3 dwelling units an acre over here, 2.2 over here, 2.1. And the proposed annexation is offering 3.125 dwelling units an acre. And so another thing that I did is I created this table right here to kind of give you guys an idea of what the maximum number of minimum size lots would be. So if you crammed as many of the smallest possible, what would that look like? So this is going off of a 40-acre parcel, taking out 20% of that area for roads and open space. And you see that would give you R2, 92, gets a little bigger with 116, 154, 232. And you can see kind of the density and how that compares to the area. So you might wonder, if they're proposing a density that's going to be around 3.125, why are they going for R2C when they could potentially take that down to R2B? The real reason is because, this is an idealistic situation. Lots are never going to be completely uniform. Johnson City has its own terrain problems. You have street networks. You have to figure out how to maneuver the lots. So they want to be able to have the flexibility. So what the smaller lot size does is it gives you the ability to create more flexible solutions and offer more housing options. And just because the minimum lot size is 6,000 doesn't necessarily mean that every single lot in there is going to be 6,000 square feet. That's just the minimum standard.
Just as, while you're on that map, though, the difference in the 8.3 at the RP3 is those are attached condominium units.
Correct.
And so what the petitioner's talking about, single-family dwellings, correct?
Right, absolutely,
Okay,
yes.
so that's a little bit like apples and bananas, because they're different animals.
Correct, yeah, it is two different style of residentials.
Hey, and also, before you go on your chart down here, you've got 5.8 dwellings. What's the U stand for?
Dwelling units.
Dwelling units per acre. On your map up here, you've got that's 3.1.
So this is the proposed annexation. So this is our proposal. If they were going to max out, so say they came in and they were like, we are going to put as many as we can possibly fit, that would be that number. That's what that would look like. So you can kind of imagine the difference between what they're proposing in those 125 lots and, this 232 number that is cramming as many in as possible. The difference in that is design, and lots that, aren't going to be 6,000. They're going to be a little bit bigger. They're going to be, some potentially irregularly shaped. Trying to avoid, I know that this piece of land specifically has a creek that runs along the side that they're going to have to avoid, so some of that can be towards open space. So this is more of an idealist chart. It's not meant to be reality. It's just meant to show you guys what that would break down to.
One of the issues I have with R2C is how close the dwellings are to each other. We've got a development out off Greenwood, and very large homes that you could almost reach out and touch each home side by side. If they went with the smaller number, would they still put them that close? And just have
I
vacant
believe-
land or what?
Well, and actually, were you going to show us a map of where we've used R2C?
Yes, that is coming up.
Okay, I was looking forward to that. I've been waiting for weeks.
Yes, that is coming up. So what's kind of interesting about that is that that's not really an R2C problem. As you'll see from this, the side setback, even in the R2, is only 10 feet. So theoretically, I mean, they could come in and they could squeeze homes together like that in the R2. And again, this is, a minimum lot size of 15,000. So it could just be like a really, really weird shaped lot that's incredibly long. But that's more of a setback issue as opposed to a density issue. Does that make sense?
Visually, no. Okay, go ahead.
So mayor-wise, I have this nice map. I know that you guys were asking about where the R2C occurs throughout the city. And so this is all of the R2C zoning throughout the city. And as you can see, it has the dates on when the rezoning occurred next to it. And then this is just a picture of Mountain Home, which I thought would be a really good example for you guys to kind of visualize what that looks like. So it keeps that single family, but it does have a little bit more of an urbanistic feel. And, potentially out here at this site, I think when you're working with the terrain issues and, like I said, the natural features that Johnson City has to offer, which is amazing, it does help the developer to kind of work around that and still be able to provide houses while preserving those features.
Now, that map, I'm sure, would be very helpful if a viewer could read it. My recollection of R2C was that we had applied it on parcels that had been annexed, or the zoning was being applied where the development had already occurred. Like, my memory was we had some R2C over like on Pardee Street and Orleans and some of these where the building was done, the neighborhood was in, and then we decided to have zoning, and these were otherwise non-conforming. That map seems to be a little bit more distributed. I can't read the dates, but are we to understand most of those yellow applications would have been undeveloped land that we were applying R2C to at those years? Some of them look to be in the 2000s, I think.
Some of them are in the 2000s. A good bit of them are actually in the 90s.
Okay, that's ancient history.
Some of these are older than me.
Now you're hurting us.
So I can't exactly speak to, what the past occurrences have been, just because I haven't been here to speak to those. But I do know that the R2C, I'm sure, has been retroactively applied to development, but I do know that there have been situations where things have been built to the R2C.
Other questions for staff? I think we have public hearing on this one as well. Is that right, Peyton?
Yes, sir.
So we'll open the microphone for public hearing. Now it's public hearing on the assignment of the R2C zone to this parcel. So we'll welcome anyone wishing to speak for or against. We'll close the public hearing and turn to the commission for deliberation.
I'll make a motion for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. I still have some reservation on the R2C, just because I think in this day, and when you think about a 6,000 square foot lot, by the time you put any kind of a house footprint on there, and then a driveway, and maybe a garage, my concern is you can conceivably arrive at a density where realistically, you're going to have more cars than you have places to put them. I mean, I can think of a couple neighborhoods that are currently in development in our community where on any given day I can drive through and see people parked on tree lawns because the density gets to be too intense. So we have a motion and a second to deal with this on second reading. But I would express to, I guess, the applicant and to staff, I still have some reservations about the maximum density. I realize there are other constraints, but 232 potential homes on a 40-acre site, realistically, that's a pie in the sky number, but I'm concerned about even numbers less than that being perhaps too extreme.
I'll add to that too, Mayor, and I agree with you. the picture we saw of Mountain Home neighborhoods are probably 2,000 square foot homes, maybe 2,500. And you're seeing just these large homes being put on R2C. And the congestion of these neighborhoods just look, I mean, the density is very recognizable. And so that's just one of my concerns, because these big homes, 2 stories being put, and they're right on top of their neighbors. And so.
Would you
a
like to
concern
talk,
as well.
Preston?
Only if it's,
Please.
only if it's okay.
Please.
Thank you, Mayor. So what I'd like to add is, if I can go back to your map here. So we put this together to illustrate, and you're exactly right, Mayor, about the apples and oranges on Woodland Village. The only reason for including Woodland Village was proximity, because of the area, that the area itself, Indian Ridge Road, extending west of Woodland Elementary, is not entirely single-family. The other is, so as you dive into the single-family neighborhoods, the reason why, obviously, the name just to orient, but then we wanted to provide the overall density and the time at which the development came through. And so I think that's important, because it tells a story about how the market has changed too. And so you can see here with Westover Park and with Kennedy Acres in the late 60s and early 70s, these lots are your typical larger 15,000, maybe even up from that square foot lots. And that's why your density is roughly 2 to 2.2 acres. You can see as we come through time, you get into Indian Trail, forgive the S, that's R2B. Your density's coming up just a little bit, because the lot's getting a little bit smaller in 97, and then we cross into the 21st century, and you'll see with Carriage Hills. Now, Huntington Green is an outlier, and it is, because Huntington Green, beautiful lots, large lots. Unfortunately, and coming from a planning perspective, that's simply not sustainable in a community that is growing at the rate that we're growing, to have lots all over the community that would be the size of Huntington Green, or to have that kind of density. And I certainly understand that that's not your expectation, to have that kind of density, but what is happening is both market forces as well as changes in policy. We are recognizing that those large lots that you found in the 60s and 70s are just not what we're finding nowadays. And so you can see that through time, as the lots are getting a little bit smaller, the market is supporting that style of home on a smaller lot. People want less lot to maintain, and that is not only what is popular in the market right now, but is also a little more sustainable, in that you're able to provide X number of units with less cost in terms of infrastructure and other services. So we would argue, just from our perspective, from a planning perspective, that taking the density from 2.5 to 3.1 is a marginal change. It is a change, but it's marginal, pardon me, and.
But 3.1 is the proposed density. We're not being asked to approve 3.1. We're being asked to approve 5.8. And so that's, I think, where a little bit of our reservation comes from. If this had a binding site plan, that would be a very different question, because we would know what we were acting on. And I understand that when you start talking about density, you're getting into questions of affordability, you're getting into questions of market forces. And so I'm not looking for everybody to have a lush manicured acre front lawn. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm concerned about is putting so many units into a place that you're setting up other social and interpersonal dynamics that aren't always helpful, where, a 1,500 square foot house that has 3 or 4 people living in it may very well have 3 or 4 cars. And when you factor that number of cars and relative lot size, then if you stack all these people super close to each other, that's where my hesitancy is. It's not about the fact that there are a lot of people don't want a 15,000 square foot yard. I get that.
So there are other changes that we are actually working on that have not only we've not only completed, but are in, currently working on with the Planning Commission and internally, that address some of those other matters. For example, we just completed some revisions to the subdivision regulations that minimize the ability to use that narrow 40-foot right-of-way. That specifically was an issue that we found up in the north part of the city with one of the subdivisions that you made reference to. And so we have found that based on these market
I
shifts.
identified the subdivision I made reference to.
Well, in terms of, there was a reference made to two different neighborhoods coming along, and so that happens to be one of them that had that 40-foot right-of-way. And so, but what we're finding is that where these changes in the market are coming about, we need to be responsive to that. And so, some of these changes are happening faster than, you know, we can be proactive from a planning perspective, and so we are having to respond. We've responded with some tweaks to the subdivision regulations to not allow some of those smaller streets in an inappropriate location, but we're also continuing to work with the engineering department on parking issues. We're also working on open space changes right now, and so there are other elements associated with this that are coming forward.
Noted.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I just would reiterate, we've got another couple weeks before third reading, but, you know, I see in communities that I work with in other parts of East Tennessee, Knoxville specifically, where they've gone real dense, and then they haven't allowed for the right-of-way to be very wide, and they've cheated on the cul-de-sac and done hammerheads that turn into parking spots that, you know, heaven forbid you needed to get an emergency vehicle in there because there's no way to get turned around because those are now parking spots. And so there's some ways where this can go differently than we expect and worse than we expect. And I just want to make sure that we're not setting something like that in motion, because once it's built, it's really hard to fix. So we have a motion and a second, so if there's not objection, we'll.
I have one other comment.
Okay.
Okay. I think I read in here somewhere, I think, Mr. Karst, you're developing the land, but then you're going to be looking for a contractor or developer to actually build the houses. Is that correct? Okay. So that group could come in and just, if we approve the R2C right here up to 5.8, then your developer can come in and just build whatever they want to up to that standard, and you probably wouldn't have anything to say about it. Is that correct?
So far, I mean, I had that happen once in Kingsville. We're at R3, and people were worried that we were going to do Section 8 housing, which is needed in places, but I said, well, I don't know that game. We don't intend to do that, but he said, once it's that way. So, you know, ordinarily, I guess maybe I've just not seen people go get something annexed. They usually, it's either they've already kind of asked for the max, or it'll go down a little bit. But you know, I get what you're saying. Somebody could actually go in there and do that. But what we're doing, we're actually you know, our alliance is working with Cambro. It's probably going to be real close to that. But I understand what the question. Well, what if they didn't do it? But I don't see any way that we ask for any more lots than what we've asked for tonight to the Planning Commission.
So would an R2B suffice?
I'm not sure. There's so many from one
Right.
municipality to the other, but I think that the setbacks and so forth, we need the setbacks that we've asked for here. And the 6,000 square foot lot works pretty good for what I think is going to be in the market. You know, and you know, we had, to be fair, we have built some that are 4,000 square feet, on 4,000 square foot lots, as you were talking about. And I don't want to act like I've not been a part of something like that, because I have. But I think that in that case, there was a lot of open space. So there's probably somewhere there's a balance. And I think between the two, in the other one, we had a lot of open space, you know, that you were concerned about, you know, having. But, you know, we're meeting people who what they want is if they're trying to work at home, they really do want to have as much square footage as they can. Often they have children. And, you know, I hear them say, well, if I have all that, then my kids are not going to be able to, if they want to do sports and travel, they can't do that. I can't have both. So I think, and many of those are coming out of apartments right now. And this is their first home. So in some ways, it is a first home for a lot of people. And I guess you could say that reasonably affordable for a lot of people that don't get any other assistance from nobody.
Can you look with staff in the coming weeks, because we'll see this again in 2 weeks,
Yeah.
about the viability of the R2B? I mean, I'm not trying to pin you down on it, but, you know, if your proposal is 3.1 and, you know, 3.125, and R2B would allow 3.8, and I think the setback and side distances aren't noticeably different, if they're different at all. I think there was a slide to that effect, if we could scroll forward or back. I don't remember which way it was, Peyton. I don't know, I guess you're talking about 15 feet on the lot width. Otherwise, it's, the rear setback is 5, so you got 15 feet on the width and 5 feet on the rear setback. And I'm not trying to pin you down here, so just, if you would, just look at that and see, because my comfort, I don't have concern about you. I just recognize once we put a zone on it,
Yeah.
it doesn't matter what you
Well,
and we
maybe there should be
discuss.
a way that, maybe that should, you all, hopefully, I've seen that before, because I understood what those people were concerned about a year and a half ago. I mean, I thought, well, you know, if I lived below it, I could see that too. But maybe there should be a way that this is the plan that's presented. If it don't go any larger than that, it would have to come back and be heard somehow. If for some reason, like I'd gotten R3 and all of a sudden I started building all these apartments that those people didn't want to see more of, that was close to it, I could understand where, you know, this is what you presented, no more than that. You know, you don't get any more than that until you come back for reapproval. That would be one way. And a couple of reasons why sometimes you have to think about the setbacks, the 6,000-foot lot, is you really do have to think about storm now. It's the new sanitary. And so most people who are going to own it after they buy it, the HOAs and so forth, they do not want to, if some of the property has to be put back on steep slopes, they will not allow more than a 2-to-1, so it's mobile. I mean, it can be managed, and the storm is really something entirely different that we're dealing with these days that we all take for granted, that we see in another development we developed in 2006 through still developing it. And you see water running from one person's backyard, nothing bad, but it just runs through to the other one. Today, you can't do that. Or you can, but there's a coming wave that you'll not be able to do that anymore. So it makes the management of it's been something we've had to learn a lot about. It may not seem like it's much, but anyway.
All right.
So I hope that answered, because sometimes it's the slopes that eats up some of the property, because that's not perfectly flat property there.
No.
By any means.
No.
And so some of that's so we get squeezed that way. So you have to kind of look at all the characteristics of a property. Then sometimes I think that, and what we're learning about storm, it's a new day for us.
But yeah, please look with staff and your project, because it may be that the concern, my concerns would be non-existent if this were a request for our, you know, the R2B, because at its worst, what's the number, 158, I think was what you showed as the max. I'm not concerned about that being put on 40 acres, but, you know, conceivably 200 plus.
Well, that's what I was suggesting. Maybe we give, we're bound by the extent of what we put. And if anyone else ever comes back with anything different, new, we would be bound by the amount that we've asked for.
So a binding site plan,
Yes, we can't exceed that.
what's that?
I don't think we have the legal authority.
Yeah, I
guess,
don't think
Sonny.
we do.
I don't think we have the legal authority to do that.
But you would if you were asking for like isn't there within the planned, like if it's an R2P or something to that? Sonny, do you mind to come up and illuminate this, or And I'm not suggesting, but I know in some of those plan zone applications, there is a binding site plan.
But not for the assignment of zoning. This is the assignment. This is the initial assignment. This is not a rezoning.
Oh, so if it were R2C and then they wanted to come in and rezone it, we could do a planned. Oh, thank you. I see all the heads nodding. Learn something new every day. Anyway, Sonny, do we want to say that just so we can get it straight from the attorney?
Correct. This would not be the proper time that you can
Okay.
do that. There is no legal authority at this point.
All right, thank you. So there's a motion and a second. If there's not objection, we'll call the roll.
Commissioner Brock,
Yes, I'll vote for it tonight.
Commissioner Hunter,
Yes.
Commissioner Murphy,
Yes.
and Mayor Wise.
Yes on second reading.
Commission, your next order of business is ordinance number 4795-21. This is an ordinance to amend the zoning map of the city of Johnson City, Tennessee, being part of the appendix to ordinance number 1519, entitled "An Ordinance to Adopt a Code of Laws and Ordinances for the City of Johnson City, Tennessee, and to repeal all laws and ordinances in conflict therewithin, and amendatory thereof by changing from B4 Planned Arterial Business District to RP3 Planned Residential District, certain properties at 2644 Knob Creek Road."
Good evening and happy 2022. There is nothing to add to this request unless you have some additional questions.
Are there questions for staff?
I'd just like a quick overview, just real
Okay.
quick, if you don't mind.
I do not mind at all.
We've had Christmas and New Year's and everything since then.
All right. So the site is located here along Knob Creek and Mountain View Road. There'll be 178 townhomes is the proposal, which is, I should learn to use this. There we go. Which this is the site plan. As you can see, they're going to use the existing driveway that is already there, and then also have an exit onto Mountain View. There is a project for Knob Creek that we have talked about, and that would be a 5-lane overpass. It is in the works of some nature. And so therefore, any type of sidewalk that would be required with it would come with that project. But they are making notations for sidewalk on Mountain View. That's kind of this is with the Knob Creek, and it's kind of my general spiel. Is there some more that you would like? It's
I
going to be
did just
rental
want to
townhomes.
make a statement, and particularly for you, Mrs. Bob, since this is your first meeting, and I'll recount something that Vice Mayor Fowler said at our last meeting, and I kind of seconded that as well. We know there are traffic issues out there. I mean, already traffic issues. And there will be improvements to Knob Creek and West Mountain View Road. The Vice Mayor indicated that he would like to see us expedite that as soon as is humanly possible, even if we get, the design work done on those improvements. But really just a commitment from the city that we keep our eye on traffic out there. We do everything humanly possible to adjust traffic lights or I don't know what all the possibilities are, but we just don't let this go. It is a problem today. And so this construction project's going to take 2 years, so we won't have residents coming in and out of there for another couple of years. And we'll know a lot more, over that time. But at least if we look in our budgeting process this spring about what we might be able to do in that area, that's just my general request. And I'll make a motion to approve.
We have a motion to approve. Is there a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there further deliberation or comment? I guess I would echo that commitment to dealing with those traffic issues. I think I've certainly heard from neighbors there, and I appreciate and I'm aware of the traffic challenges that are out there. I think what people oftentimes lose sight of when we're dealing with a request like this is they think that we're going to get to choose whether land gets used. And the city's authority is to determine land use. It is not to determine whether land is used. We don't own that land. And so right now, we've put a label on it, and we've said its highest and best use in the views of the city is to be B4. B4 is the motor mile, B4 is the mall. And I don't think the traffic would be made better by the kind of intensity that B4 represents. Will the traffic be improved by adding more housing out there? It's not going to be improved. I don't know that it'll be made appreciably worse. And I think the commitment we need to make is on the public infrastructure that services that. And I think that commitment has obviously already been initiated, and you're hearing us reiterate it now. But I want for those who live out there and have a special concern about this project to be reassured that we're not making this decision recklessly or flippantly. Again, we decide land use. We do not decide whether land is used. And a private party owns this land, and they have a right to develop it. I heard from folks that said, well, you know, nobody's building big box retail. Well, that's probably more or less true, but there are a lot of things that can go into B4 that aren't big box retail, and we're seeing a lot of that kind of development happening in Johnson City right now. And so with the question being B4 or a less intensive residential, I think while in the short term that may cause some heartburn, I think in the long term that's a real win for transitioning from less intense residential up on the hill to the point you get down closer to State of Franklin, where it's obviously a commercial corridor. Are there other comments? Are we ready to?
Mayor, I'd agree with what you said. It's well put.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. All right, if there's not objection, we'll call the roll.
Commissioner Brock?
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter?
Yes.
Commissioner Murphy?
Yes.
And Mayor Wise?
Yes.
Commission, your next order of business is the third reading of Ordinance 4796, which is an ordinance to consider the approval of the abandonment of public right-of-way for portions of West King Street and McClure Street and Alley.
Good evening, Mayor Wise, Commissioners, Mrs. Ball. This was a city-initiated request to abandon these three rights-of-way in King Commons Park, this alley, this portion of West King Street, and this portion of McClure Street. This came by way of a plat that consolidates 9 lots over here on the left into one lot. The Regional Planning Commission approved the final plat contingent upon the Board of Commissioners closing the rights-of-way. There are existing utilities under West King Street. There's a plat, a note's been added to the plat that designates this portion of West King Street as a utility easement. I know you all are all familiar with these pictures. I'm sure you've been down there looking at Christmas trees. West King Street and this portion of McClure Street are already closed to vehicular traffic and are closed off with bollards. And then the alley that's in question is just a part of this field. I have no new information to add to this presentation. The Board of Commissioners approved this, the closing on their first and second readings at the previous 2 meetings.
Are there questions for staff? If not, I think we've talked about this one sufficiently. Is there a motion to take action?
Move approval.
Motion to approve and a second. If there's not objection, we'll call the roll.
Commissioner Brock?
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter?
Yes.
Commissioner Murphy?
Yes.
Mayor Wise?
Yes.
Commission, your next order of business is the third reading of Ordinance 4797, an ordinance to rezone 219 Lynn Road from A1 agricultural to R2 low-density residential to allow subdivision of 0.5 acre lots.
The PowerPoint is loading. So just to kind of go over what it is a 5-acre lot that is on Lynn Road. And they would if you remember, they would like to carve out a piece for their daughter, and that's really the request. And there we go. But just to kind of give you an idea of where this is located and what it looks like. But in order to do the request, they need the R2 zoning. So, and that's what their subdivision will look like. So,
Are there questions for staff? I think we've talked about this previously. If there's not, we'll take a motion.
I will make a motion to approve so they can get married.
Second, we'll have a motion and a second, and congratulations from the commission. And I think if there's not further discussion, we'll call the roll.
Commissioner Brock?
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter?
Yes.
Commissioner Murphy?
Yes.
Mayor Wise?
Yes. Congratulations.
Congratulations. Good luck.
The next order of business is Ordinance 479821, an ordinance to rezone 1503 Bryant Lane from RP3 Planned Residential to R4 Medium Density Residential to allow for the addition of 17 units to the retreat apartments and reconcile a zoning boundary issue at Riddle Street.
The request is before you as far as the location and where that kind of clear up needs to be. I think it's helpful as far as talking about it in this composite site plan, where you see that it is these 16 units and a little bit of this one, I believe it's like right here, that makes the 17, but it's essentially bringing in that building.
But there's not been changes to any
No
of this
changes
since
to
the
this
first and
request
second
at all.
reading. Are there questions for staff on this one? If
I'll
not,
move for approval.
We have a motion to approve
Second.
and a second. If there's not objection, we'll call the roll.
Commissioner Brock?
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter?
Yes.
Commissioner Murphy?
Yes.
Mayor Wise?
Yes.
Thank you. Our next order of business is under Other, and it's consideration of an approval of a change order number 3 to High Street IT Solutions contract. And we have Mr. Wilson here to address the commission on this issue.
Who, again, I just want to point out the spectacular job of being retired that you are doing, Bob.
I'm working on it.
All right, you just keep trying, man.
It's a work in progress. If I didn't want to be here, I wouldn't be here.
That's true.
As Commission will recall, back in December of 19, or 20, excuse me, the contract with High Street was approved for just under $2.9 million. That contract was our new software. We had a 12-month implementation period. At that time, that was staff's best effort that we thought we could make that. That would have been an implementation date of January of 22. Since that time, a number of things have occurred. I think we've all learned that the project was much more complex and much more involved in it than we had anticipated. The amount of staff time required for this on our staff to do their existing full-time day jobs and take on this additional responsibility was more than we had anticipated. We just overestimated our capabilities. So since then, we have gone back with High Street, and they have came back with a proposal. So instead of implementing this on January 1st, which was bypassed, we're going to go with the financial, budget, purchasing aspects of this will be implemented on February 1st, which is approaching quickly. The payroll and the HR component will be, instead of January 1st, will go live on April 1st. Spreading that out gives our staff a little lead time in there for that. There's still a number of things on the payroll side that we have to do, but we're comfortable that we're going to make it, but it's still a lot of work. To give a little background, we did have some staff that have left. We've had one of our leadership team has left, and we've had 3 other individuals who have left, and that they were all very instrumental in this project. So that has hurt us. And we also lost one of our long-term employees who had a boatload of institutional knowledge about our old system that would have been invaluable in making the conversion process for the new system. So as a follow-up also, when we first talked to High Street, they were proposing 13 months. We had 2 other firms we looked at that would implement Oracle. One proposed 13 months and the other one proposed 15 months. Sorry, 15 and 16 months. And their cost was considerably higher, one being $5 million and the other $5.7 million. So I'm just saying that to give some reference that the time frame is not, adding this on for this 1 month, an additional 3 months for everything is not an unreasonable amount to complete this project. So the High Street will be doing for this additional time frame is taking additional work on their part. When a software project, we're paying for their staff time. And at one point, there were 33 staff members that have worked on our project. So you can see how many people are involved in this.
How many departments are impacted by this software change?
Well, essentially, to some degree, every department
Payroll
will because
and
of
so on,
payroll.
right.
The major one, and also in processing payment requests and all that, that's a small impact. The major impacts are finance, purchasing, budget, and HR. But it will impact all departments and all employees to some degree. So High Street will also be picking, as part of this, they'll be picking up additional work. Where the city was the primary responsibility for, there's 8 categories here where we've shifted it. The city will go from primary to secondary. High Street will become secondary to primary to pick up this additional work. There's also some additional work they'll have to do with a temporary interface because the financial side and the payroll side aren't going live at the same time. So we'll have to have an interface to make that work for that time period. So the additional cost for that is $497,300. We've reviewed, it was actually higher when we first started talking, but Lisa and Janet really worked hard to get them to beat on them hard to get that price down. Looking at the total cost of the contract, looking at the additional work that's involved, looking at what the other firms who are very highly respected, competent firms, looking at what they were charging, we're still well below that cost, and I think it's a fair request on High Street's part to do this additional work. So staff would recommend this be approved for the change order number 3. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Are there questions for Bob or others on staff?
I'll just make a comment, Mr. Wilson. Is it safe to say that, last year we were dealing with ransomware and IT staff was 100% focused for weeks in getting this? So I'm sure that probably delayed a little bit the input of our own staff in this project. When you only have so many people, you can only do so much, so.
Are there other questions for staff? No. Is there a motion?
So moved.
We have a motion to approve. Is there a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Thank you all for your efforts on that front. Software conversions are painful until they are the next best thing. You're so glad you did them, you don't like doing them. We have a motion and a second. If there's not objection, we'll call the roll.
Commissioner Brock?
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter?
Yes.
Commissioner Murphy?
Yes.
And Mayor Wise?
Yes. Oh, I thought you had a presentation, Phil. I was afraid, because I'm like, there's a blizzard coming. Phil, you can't come. All right. Do we have any further business on our agenda? I'll invite any commissioners that have reports they want to make those.
Yeah, Mayor Wise, if I may, just want to reiterate the MLK activities that will be taking place here soon. We have the Mlk Unity March that will take place on Monday, January 17th at 12:45 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We'll be meeting in the front of Carver Recreation Center. We'll have our very own Mayor Wise sharing a few words on unity in the city.
Don't let that discourage your attendance.
As well as President Brian Nolan from ETSU and President Bill Greer from Mlk University. They will be sharing on unity on the campus. We have a former mayor, Jenny Brock. She'll talk about remembering the legacy of Dr. King. We have a couple other leaders in the community sharing before we take the walk, but I just encourage the entire community to come together for the sake of unity, joining hand in hand and heart to heart, because this is a great city that we live in, and I believe that MLK Walk will be a good way to kick off a new year of 2022 together.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Well, I'd just like to thank all the city staff for everything they've done to make Johnson City look so good during the holiday season. And I can tell you the compliments we get from our citizens couldn't be any better. They've written all the Chamber of Commerce words for us, I think, and the pictures Mr. McSpadden in the back has done. This right here is just amazing. But thank you all so much for doing that. And Mrs. Ball, I want to personally welcome you at our first meeting and really look forward to the work that we're all going to do together.
Thank you.
It's exciting.
And I would say thank you very much for the confidence that you've put in me. And given that I am in my third week, I would echo that I am so impressed with the staff here with the City of Johnson City. I couldn't be happier to work with the group of people that are here, and the community has just been so welcoming. It is unbelievable how this community has embraced me in this short time. So thank you all so much. I've got a lot to learn, but luckily there are great people here at the city that are committed to helping me. So thank you.
Thank you. Well, if there's nothing further, we'll stand adjourned.